Okay, so are you ready to dive deep?
Yeah.
Because we are going all in on UFOs this time, and we've got some seriously mind-blowing stuff to unpack from Michio Kaku, the physicist.
Michio Kaku on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, that's not exactly your typical UFO chat over a couple of beers.
Right. This is a big deal. Like, mainstream science is finally saying, okay, we need to talk about this.
Absolutely. It's gone way past, do they exist? Now it's, who are they and what are they doing here? And Kaku himself, he's a great example of how the thinking has shifted, because he used to be a skeptic.
Yeah, he talks about how this documentary filmmaker, Carolyn Corey, she approached him to consult on a UFO project, and he thought it was going to be a bunch of grainy footage, the usual stuff.
But then he sees what she's captured, and it blew him away. And this is Michio Kaku we're talking about. He understands physics on a whole other level, and even he was impressed.
He actually said it was more convincing than hours of military tapes.
Yeah.
So that tells you something.
So it's not just some blurry lights in the sky anymore. We're talking about objects that seem to defy our understanding of physics.
Which brings us to the Pentagon, right?
Yeah.
And there are 5 categories for UAPs.
Okay, yeah, so you've got your weather balloons, your foreign adversaries.
But it's that 5th category, other, that has everyone freaking out.
Other.
Other, as in we have absolutely no idea. It's basically an admission that we're seeing things that we can't explain.
Yeah.
And Kaku uses the Nimitz encounter from 2004 as a prime example.
The Tic Tac, right? Zipping around off the coast of San Diego. Yeah, that one was wild.
Exactly. Multiple pilots saw it. It was tracked on radar, even caught on infrared cameras. This thing was moving faster than anything we could build, changing direction instantly, and there's no visible means of propulsion.
And you can't just say, oh, it was a hypersonic drone. We didn't even have hypersonic drones back in 2004.
Exactly. Kaku points out that the military had actually abandoned its hypersonic programs at that point because they couldn't get them to fly stable. They were crashing all the time.
So how do you go from that to something as smooth and silent as the Tic Tac? It doesn't make sense.
It suggests a level of technology that's so advanced we can barely comprehend it, which is where Kaku introduces this idea of a type system for classifying civilizations. He talks about type 1, type 2, type 3.
All right, break it down for me. What do these types even mean?
Okay, so imagine a type 1 civilization. They've basically mastered their planet's energy. Think like weather control, earthquake prevention.
So they've basically become planetary superheroes.
Basically. Now, a type 2 civilization, they've taken it a step further. They've figured out how to control the energy of their entire star.
Whoa, okay, we're talking next level stuff here. So like a galactic level civilization.
Exactly. And then there's type 3. That's where it gets really wild. Type 3 civilizations, they're manipulating energy on a galactic scale. We're talking like black holes bending space-time.
Like straight out of science fiction.
Yeah.
So where do UFOs fit into all of this? Are we talking type 2, type 3?
Kaku seems to think anything capable of interstellar travel, especially the kind of maneuvers we're seeing, it'd have to be at least a type 2, if not a type 3. And he thinks the key to reaching that level might be something called Planck energy.
Planck energy. You've officially lost me.
Okay, think of it like this. In Star Trek, they have those warp drives that bend space-time to travel faster than light.
Yeah.
Planck energy is like the theoretical energy source that could actually make that possible. It's the point where our current understanding of physics kind of breaks down.
So are you saying these UFOs could be using Planck energy? Is that even possible?
It's possible. And if they've figured out how to tap into Planck energy, well, it would explain how they're doing all the things that seem impossible to us. Imagine being able to manipulate the very fabric of space-time.
That's a lot to process. But before we go full-blown science fiction here, I'm curious, you mentioned Kaku seems pretty sure that contact with an alien civilization is just a matter of when. Why is he so confident? The universe is a big place.
That's exactly his point. The universe is so mind-bogglingly enormous that it's statistically improbable that we're the only intelligent life out there. Really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? We're so used to thinking about life and intelligence in human terms.
Right, like we're the blueprint for what intelligence should look like.
Exactly. But what if we're just one tiny branch on a giant sprawling tree of life? And those other branches, they could look completely different from anything we can imagine.
Okay, so how do we even begin to wrap our heads around that? I mean, where do we even start?
Well, Kaku uses this interesting example. He talks about bees.
Bees. Like honeybees. What do bees have to do with alien civilizations?
So he was filming an episode of Fear Factor.
Wait, hold up. Fear Factor, as in the show with the stunts and the bugs?
So
And
it's one, and they had this beekeeper on set, because of course they did, it's Fear Factor. And at one point, this swarm of bees from another hive It just shows up out of
A
nowhere.
surprise bee convention on Fear
All
Factor.
three. And the beekeeper had to stop everything. They couldn't just shoo these new bees away.
Why not? What was the big deal?
The beekeeper said they had to let the two groups of bees communicate, like they had to work it out.
Work it out. What were they doing? Negotiating a treaty? Were they all doing the waggle dance?
We'll never know. But Kaku's point is, these bees were clearly communicating something complex. We just don't speak their language.
So we're missing half the conversation.
Maybe more than half. It makes you wonder what other forms of intelligence are out there right here on Earth that we completely miss because we're so focused on ourselves.
Because we're so used to our own way of doing things.
Exactly. We're looking for signs of intelligent life that fit our definition of technology and communication. But what if it's all around us, just expressing itself in ways we don't understand?
Okay, now that's both mind-blowing and a little creepy.
Yeah.
Like, what if we're not just missing signals from outer space, but from right under our noses?
It's a possibility. And speaking of things that are both amazing and potentially terrifying, Kaku doesn't shy away from talking about the downsides of all this advanced tech. He's particularly worried about gene editing.
Yeah, gene editing. It's like we can edit out diseases, which is incredible, but what's to stop us from choosing desirable traits for our kids? Designer babies and all that.
It's exactly. Kaku's concerned about a potential black market for genetic enhancements, where the wealthy could essentially buy their way into a genetically superior class.
Oh man, that's a whole other ethical nightmare. And then there's AI. Didn't he have some pretty chilling things to say about where that could all lead?
Yeah, he did. He brought up some pretty unsettling historical examples, too, like the CIA's M-Culture program.
MKUltra. Wait, wasn't that like mind control experiments and LSD? I thought that was just a conspiracy theory.
Nope, it really happened.
Oh.
And it gets even wilder. Kaku also talks about this guy, Jose Delgado,
Yeah.
who was implanting electrodes in bulls' brains back in the day.
Hold on. Electrodes. In bulls' brains.
You heard right. And he claimed he could control their movements with the push of a button, like a remote control for a bull.
Okay, now that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Right. And while Delgado claimed this technology could be used to treat neurological disorders, it also raises some serious ethical red flags. Like, where do we draw the line with manipulating the brain?
And how do we even begin to answer that question when we're talking about AI? I mean, if we can barely handle the ethics of controlling a bull with a remote, what happens when we're dealing with machines that could potentially outthink us?
That's the billion-dollar question. Kaku's point is, we need to be thinking about these ethical considerations now, before it's too late. We can't just get caught up in the excitement of new technology without considering the potential consequences.
It's like we're standing on the edge of this incredible future, but there are also some pretty terrifying pitfalls along the way. So where do we go from here? So we're standing at this crossroads with amazing technological advancements on one hand and some pretty terrifying risks on the other. Where do we even go from here?
Well, Kaku seems to think our best bet is to embrace the unknown rather than fear it.
Embrace the unknown. That's a tall order when we're talking about things that could potentially wipe us out.
I hear you. But his point is, the universe is so vast, so full of possibilities, there's a good chance we're not alone. And that in itself is a pretty amazing realization.
Okay, I'll grant you that. But how do we even begin to prepare for contact with a civilization that could be thousands, maybe even millions of years ahead of us? I mean, imagine trying to explain the internet to a caveman.
It might be even weirder than that. We're so used to looking for signs of intelligence and technology that make sense to us. But what if they're so advanced that we can't even recognize it?
It's like that saying, if a lion could talk, we wouldn't understand it. What if they're trying to communicate, but we're just not picking up on it?
Exactly. And that's where Kaku's type system comes in. Imagine a type 2 or type 3 civilization. They're not just using technology, they're practically becoming technology.
Yeah.
Their understanding of the universe would be on a whole other level.
So what are we supposed to do? Just hope for the best.
Hope for the best, but prepare for anything. Kaku talks about the importance of open-mindedness, curiosity, and humility. Because if we go into these potential encounters with fear and suspicion, well, history hasn't exactly painted a pretty picture of what happens then.
You're saying we need to be the anthropologists, not the conquerors.
Exactly. Imagine if, instead of sending out radio signals, we sent out something that conveyed our curiosity, our desire to learn.
Okay, now that is a challenge. What kind of message would represent humanity at our best?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves. Because if and when that contact happens, how we respond Well, that's going to define us as a species.
It's almost like the act of preparing for that contact, of expanding our understanding of intelligence, of technology, of our place in the universe. Maybe that's what ultimately pushes us forward.
Maybe that's the real gift of this whole UFO phenomenon. It forces us to confront our own limitations and imagine a future that's bigger, weirder, and more amazing than we can even comprehend right now.
Well, you've definitely given us a lot to think about. If you're listening and your head is buzzing with possibilities, you're not alone. It seems like we're standing on the verge of something incredible. Or maybe it's always been incredible and we're just now starting to open our eyes. That's it for our deep dive on UFOs and the future of humanity. Let us know your thoughts, and until next time, keep looking up.